Hello, welcome to the first Q&A. I realized it would be kind of an interesting idea to start making video responses to questions that I get. I really like the questions, and the responses can sometimes be longer than just a comment on Facebook, so I figured I'd make videos. So, the first question. Actually, before the question, I'm going to be in silence for a moment. Because whenever I approach a question, that's sort of my algorithm or equation. It's like start in silence, start with being comfortable not knowing anything. And then when you're ready, you feel still. Then you read the question, and then you pause again. And then the answer comes out. Sometimes it doesn't come out. And that's fine too. But, okay, so just hold for a second. Go into your breath. Sounds around you. Bring your attention into the present moment. So the first question is, how do you recognize unconscious people, and how do you stay present then? For me, I don't see unconscious people. I see unconscious actions. And there's a big difference. Unconscious people means that they are their actions. It's sort of attaching their sort of mistakes, so to speak, to who they really are. And that's the big trick for us as well, is that we attach our mistakes to who we are, our patterns. So that the first part is that notice an unconscious action is generally can be perceived as an emotional reaction, right? It has an intensity to it. It has suffering in it, pain or frustration or anger or fear. And, part of it being unconscious is the fact that the person that's releasing it isn't fully aware that they're experiencing it or that they are releasing it. It's just happening automatically, which is part of why it's called unconscious. They're unaware of it. And so when somebody is reacting intensely towards you, or towards me, the first thing I always do, is self-inventory. Look at myself. How am I reacting? Not just externally, but internally, what am I experiencing? Because that's where unconsciousness starts. With whether it's that other person or it's from us, it always starts within us, or it always starts within the individual. So, if somebody is, oh, my battery is running low. Oh well. If somebody is coming at you with intense emotional reaction, right, what we would label as unconscious action, first thing I do is recognize how I'm reacting within. At this point in my practice, I don't really have any form of unconscious reaction because I've been doing it for years. I've been self-inquiring for years on this practice. And the more you start to pay attention to what's going on within first as like your priority, the more you catch your own unconscious behaviors. Because if somebody's coming at you with emotional reaction and you suddenly feel stressed or anxious or fear or anger or like a strong desire to retaliate or whatever, there's a gift, there's an opportunity for you to recognize your own unconsciousness. So rather than being the victim of their little game, you become the student of their game, in a sense. And through this practice of turning inward and looking at your own reactions, you slowly develop, you start to put more light on your unconsciousness, and you start to master yourself, so to speak. When you shine light on unconsciousness is another word for ego. When you shine light on it, it starts to dissolve. Doesn't mean it's going to go away instantly, because it might have a lot of momentum. But regardless, if you're able to just observe and shine awareness on your own internal unconsciousness, rather than saying like, oh, this person's wrong for attacking me. It's not about them. It's always about, you always got to bring it back to you. What can you learn? What can you master from this? And that's partly because what we're experiencing inside also we kind of attract, right? It can be helpful if somebody's coming at you intensely to not see it as the individual coming at you, but to see it as the present moment, because they are part of the present moment, just like I am in this video. I am part of your present moment right now. And when this unconscious person is coming at you, they are now, as Eckhart puts it, your honorable guest of the now. They are the present moment in a yeah, sure, a semi-violent or scary form or reacting form, but it's happening. The present moment is coming at you to pull at your own triggers and to teach you, if you're able to look at yourself rather than, just sort of put all the blame on the outside world. And in doing this, you are staying into the second part of the question, how do you stay present then? Well, it's not how do you stay present then, it's how do you stay present now. Always now, right? But you stay present now by observing what's going on within you. That is you staying present. And that is you sort of elevating your own consciousness in the midst of a more challenging situation or environment, which is a gift, right? So, now, as far as practical portals to keep you grounded, to not get swept away if you're having a hard time observing it without letting it just come right out, then the normal portals of conscious breathing. So if somebody's coming at you, just if you're having a hard time slowing your own reaction, or in other words, somebody's coming at you, you feel anxiousness, or you feel anger, or you fear jealousy, or whatever the pain, the suffering is that you're feeling, then you go to one of the portals. You go one of the meditation techniques. Whichever one that you find is effective is fine. I like practicing various ones, but so conscious breathing, go into your breath, and focus on healing your pain body, rather than trying to figure out that person's and trying to blame them for your reactions and for your suffering and on all of that. Forget that for a second and just focus on you. Come back to your stillness. Because if you actually want to help this other unconscious being that's coming at you, the only way you really can is if you're coming from stillness. If you're coming from any emotional reaction or ego, then it's only going to fuel the fire of the unconsciousness, and then the argument and the drama gets bigger and crazier, and it turns into a mess. So one of the best things you can do for them is to first slow yourself down. And that's through conscious breathing, through shining light on your own unconscious patterns, through body awareness, bringing attention into your body. Another big aspect of this is that when somebody's operating in an unconscious pattern towards you, it means they're strongly identified with the voice in their head, and they're not aware of the emotions going on inside them, and the emotions are stirring up these are creating these thoughts out of these painful emotions, and then the thoughts kind of make the emotion worse, and then it starts this cycle, right, where it feeds off of each other. So recognizing that in yourself is very important. It is the practice. And you're not wrong for experiencing unconsciousness in yourself. It's actually, as Eckhart puts, he says, like, you're not wrong for that. It's actually, because it's not personal. You are not your unconscious patterns just as much as that person coming at you is not their unconscious patterns. And mistaking their actions for who they are, their unconscious actions for who they are, is one of the key ingredients of ego. It's of separation, right? It makes us feel like that person's different from me, and this is getting into a lot of different topics, but so it's more important to recognize consciousness within yourself than in the other person, and it's generally has to do with emotional reaction, which, if you probably noticed too, what's interesting about emotional reaction is logic kind of goes out the window. Intelligence drops dramatically when there's emotional reaction. Not in a personal sense, but just in like something I've observed in myself and in others. It's just like, I don't know, it sort of bypasses logical reasoning when you're deeply in that pain of an emotional reaction. And there's a deep practice too in surrendering when an unconscious person is coming at, or an unconscious reaction of that person, of the present moment, is coming at you, is surrendering to it, saying, okay, this is what is happening right now. This is the present moment, and I will surrender to it just as I was surrendering to it earlier when it was technically easier, when nothing was happening, nothing dramatic was occurring. So now it's just the next thing to surrender to say, okay, I'm not going to resist you being an unconscious pattern, because if I'm resisting you being in your pain and throwing it on me, then now I'm in it. And I can't help you get out of it if I'm in it as well. And so that's how we keep ourselves grounded, is by keeping awareness on us. And it's very much a practice. It's not something that just instantly happens necessarily. It takes a lot of practice. And slowly you start to see these people, the challenging people, as more like as gifts, or as almost like levels in a video game, and like the better you get at the levels, the harder the big bosses become. In some ways it's kind of like that. But then when you successfully do maintain your own stillness, even when somebody's coming at you reactively, not only is that a huge milestone for you, but it also is healing them. Because when you have no resistance to somebody's ego or to somebody's emotional reaction, there's this magical thing that occurs where they start to look at themselves. It's like you become a mirror, and then they see their own crazy, and they're like, oh. And often they apologize. And what's more important, hopefully, is just that they become aware of it, so they themselves can heal it or transcend it or raise their own consciousness, because that's would be the best for everyone. So, thank you for this question. It's a deep question, and there's lots of answers in it, but I think I got the main part of it. So, going back into silence, into being. It's also important to practice this with relatively easy situations first, before you try to practice it with somebody who has deeply intense unconscious actions or reactions. in a sense, you kind of want to build your muscle to holding your stillness, to practicing surrender in small situations. So when these big ones come up, the bigger ones come up, you're able to handle them more masterfully. And then, like any practice, the more you practice it, the better you get. The easier, in a sense, the easier it becomes, or the more natural it feels. It just happens, it doesn't feel like there's so much effort involved. Yes, thank you. Thank you for the question. Much love.